In a world that mistakes sensitivity for weakness and depth for difficulty, there's a different kind of conversation happening here. Welcome to Still Waters, where Bill Allen and Marcas O'Dea go beneath the surface level noise to explore what it actually means to thrive as a sensitive, creative man. Creativity, leadership, relationships, the lives we're building, and the ones we're still becoming. The currents here run deeper, and so do you.
Hello, everybody. This is Marcas O'Dea with my colleague Bill Allen, and this is Still Waters Podcast. We originally started this podcast and we had a certain vision for it. We had an idea of who we wanted to interview, what topics we wanted to cover, and several other elements that would carry us forward into our future. And we've learned since now we've recorded a large number of interviews and conversations with highly sensitive, with therapists, with psychologists, with people like Dr. Judith Orloff, who is a specialist in empaths, and Dr. Tracy Cooper and Jed Diamond, and just so many people who have really brought a quality to this program we feel will resonate with you. And that's why we wanted to redo this introductory video and kind of describe what it is now instead of what it was before. So, Bill, why don't you tell us why this podcast, why it exists?
Well, Marcus and I were noodling this over several months back. We were trying to figure out what kind of boundaries or parameters we're going to put around the podcast. And the more we talked about it, both of us are highly sensitive men and with broad interests. And we were thinking that we would try to certainly keep the common thread of having topics that were of interest, say, for our target audience, which was highly sensitive men, but also broaden some of the topics to areas that would be kind of expansive and educational and so forth, but not necessarily on the day-to-day lives of highly sensitive people. But as Marcus was alluding to, we've had some great interviews since then, and it's given us some ideas about really focusing on high sensitivity in men, practical terms, and trying to get the kind of information that you need to see and hear from experts and from what we call men in the street that are highly sensitive men. A lot of men that we've met through the HSP men's group and perhaps others that we've been in contact with over the years. So this is going to, I think, refocus and kind of repurpose the idea that, at the end of the day, if it's not valuable information to you, it doesn't matter about how entertaining it might be. It's got to be something that's useful, that you can take away that kind of knowledge and information to help you live your life more fully as a highly sensitive man. That's kind of the how we're fixing this up. And like I said, this is the intro episode part duh. And so we're hopefully we're going to hit this right. And I think we will, because at the end of the day, as highly sensitive men, we kind of know inherently the kind of things that would be of interest to us. And we would assume that in many ways, they're going to be of interest to you as well.
And talking to the highly sensitive community, we hear a lot about what men in particular, but what sensitive people go through on a daily basis. And so our topics, we want the topics to be broad enough to cover issues and other conversations of interest like health, sensitive men's health, therapy, grief, relationships, all of these things that we as humans, we as men, we as sensitive men experience in our lifetimes. And so because we have such a different operating system within us called sensitivity, those things kind of hit differently than they do with the average person. So that's what we're interested in, having that. We want to have people talking about things that you may not have known about before. And you can say, oh, I'm glad I know that now. And so these are the types of guests that we're looking to bring on, that we have already brought on. And so that's how we want to move forward. Bill, what about the name? We've had several guests ask us about the name Still Waters.
Well, it's an old adage, still waters run deep, and it usually is used to describe sort of quiet people that don't say a lot, that aren't braggarts and that kind of thing.
Extroverts.
Experts, but the
Extrovert.
extroverts, yes. The real thing about still waters is that it implies that there is a depth about, what we hope to accomplish here, and I think that's a real important theme that you're gonna see throughout our podcast, is that we don't wanna just scratch the surface on topics. We wanna, as we say in the logo, we wanna run deeper because that's something that highly sensitive people do. We have this tremendous gift of depth of processing. And so it's not going to be very interesting, I would think, for most highly sensitive men to listen to a podcast that's very superficial. That deepness is what really attracts us to this and doing this work. And I hope that will be the thing that keeps you coming back is getting depth in the interviews that we do and getting that kind of that stuff that's way down inside, if you will, and bringing it to the surface. Still waters was a perfect metaphor for that. I thought it was a great idea, and the Marcus working on the logo, I mean, I couldn't have that couldn't have been any better. It was perfect rendition of that whole thing. Peace out in nature, lake, mountain, depth of water, that kind of thing. You it just got all wrapped up together. So in essence, that's really kind of where we're trying to shoot for.
And it's definitely Run Deeper is not just a tagline. It's actually our value statement. We aim to run deeper. You can get shallow conversations, lists online, 5 things you can do as a highly sensitive person, whatever. Those are fine. They're entertaining, they're somewhat helpful. It does further the conversation a little bit, but what we're doing is deepening the conversation. And that's our vision, that's our value statement, that's what we're doing from here. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we really I would like to encourage you to be interactive as listeners. We will listen, and if you have suggestions or ideas about topics or speakers that you feel would be representative of something that you'd like to for us to run deeper on, we'll certainly consider that. But your feedback is going to guide us in many ways as we go down this journey together. We're trying to pick guests that will have topics and things to say that you'll find very informative and hopefully lots of useful information you can take out and apply in your lives. But please do stay close to the podcast in terms of your interaction with us so that we know maybe there's a
Share it.
topic that
Yeah.
just isn't working for you or something. And we'd like to know that. That way, kind of course correction as we go along.
And when I was coming up as a younger man and as a boy, I felt so isolated in my sensitivity. I didn't think there was anybody else anywhere who experienced the world like I did. And now as a more mature man, I'm finding that there's an enormous community of sensitive men. How many would you estimate, Bill? What are the statistics on this? Like
Overall, highly sensitive men, the numbers I'm hearing are close to 1 billion with a B men in the world who are highly sensitive. That's a big number. Now,
it's a huge
relative
number.
to the rest of the population, it may seem like we're in a minority, but when you think about the size of this group, this isn't a one-off thing or some sort of kind of abnormality that doesn't appear very often. It's not an abnormality. In fact, it's a normal temperament trait, but we have large numbers. Now, I think the thing that's really significant about that is that a lot of those men, a lot of that billion men group is either unaware of their high sensitivity, has not heard of this, doesn't understand it, and would enormously benefit from being able to latch on to something like this podcast or a men's group somewhere or reading some books about high sensitivity. So we've got a lot of work to do, all of us do, to help educate that group. But it is a large group, Marcus, and it's not small.
And there's another kind of faction within that billion number, and that's people who are comfortable with being labeled sensitive. And so they kind of push that away and they pretend and they go along to get along by being different than who they are at the core. And we want to reach those people too, because we know from living a sensitive life that sensitivity is a strength. And as one of our guests, Dr. Judith Orloff, said, she said, I believe sensitive men are going to save the world. And that to me was such a revelation, because it kind of opens your eyes and says, yeah, we see the world differently. We approach it differently. So our solutions are not going to be the same as somebody who's not sensitive. We're going to think of all the details and the depths to which we'll have to go in order to correct the course of humanity. And we're not saying superheroes, we're not saying anything like that. We're just saying, as a group, we have an opportunity, not an obligation, but an opportunity to navigate society in a better direction. I think that's the best way I can say it. So the range that we're looking at is intentional. We have 1 billion or more men out there who are either acknowledging their sensitivity, have come to it late in their lives, which we have people we've interviewed on the show that are, in their 70s and 80s who are just learning about this, and it's an eye opener for them. And so bringing and welcoming people into this community is one of our goals. We think that it's beneficial. We think that you'll get a lot out of it, and we hope you'll interact with us, because we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're doing this for a reason. And so we definitely encourage people to reach out. It's easy to join Bill's men's group. You just reach out to him. And what we're finding is that the podcast itself is actually opening some people's eyes to the fact that there are groups of men in the world who are working around this topic of high sensitivity. So I know it was, for me, when I found Bill and the group, it was like finding my tribe after 50 years of wandering the earth. And so it's amazing. And I'm not trying to hard sell anything. I'm just saying that it has helped me as a man to really accept my sensitivity. And it has even encouraged me to be a lot more creative. So, and that's another topic, Bill, that we want to cover, is creativity.
Absolutely. And I think that's a byproduct of our high sensitivity. Certainly, as Marcus was saying, we really need to, trumpet this idea that high sensitivity is a gift in itself. I look at it like this, that highly sensitive people are specialized humans. I don't think we're superheroes or anything like that. We're just ordinary people that have this gift, this ability to discern things from our environment and from the environmental cues we get through our senses and sensory processing abilities. One of those outputs, and you will notice and find that some of the most creative people on the planet, artists, writers, film directors, all kinds of people in the creative space, highly sensitive people are highly sensitive people. And it's because of that combination of empathy, deep processing, which creates creativity and new outputs in terms of how you solve problems and things like that. Once you start to see that, you start connecting the dots and think, this isn't such a bad thing. No, it does have challenges. We will acknowledge that. We will talk to guests who will help all of us try to get through some of those challenges of being highly sensitive. But the idea is, as Marcus said, this is a gift, and it has these great outputs like creativity. And that's a subject that we've touched on in a few interviews. We will continue to offer it as a thread through various podcast interviews. But it's something you need to recognize about yourself too, is that you are a creative individual. And if you give yourself a chance, you'll find that you can solve problems and solve issues and create things just as well as anybody can.
Well, me finding my sensitivity has actually helped me to be so much more creative. Once I embraced the sensitive part, it was like the creative floodgates opened for me. And my life in the last 12, 18 months has just expanded tremendously, which is something that I've aimed to do. Not every person, sensitive or otherwise, wants to be that much in the world. I did. And so it was kind of fortuitous when Bill came to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. What do you think?" And I immediately saw the blessing in this because it's a conversation. And it's a conversation that we don't have a lot with other people. Another topic that we focus on is masculinity. First century masculinity, there's a lot of conversations going on about it, but there are not that many about the sensitive masculinity, of which is very present, but whose voice kind of gets drowned out in the chaos of the world. So, concentrating that conversation on topics like that are incredibly helpful.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought up the masculinity thing because I think it is an important function of highly sensitive men. I think, especially these days, is to be our authentic selves, to be who we are, which is more compassionate and more empathetic and more vulnerable and more open to the variability that exists in the world today. So in many ways, and you got to understand something too, highly sensitive people have been around since the beginning of humans. And certainly during the early days, as we were hunter-gatherers, they were important for a number of reasons, but largely because of their skills in being aware of what's going on in the environment. Well, I think today, this is another opportunity where we can step up again and model a new type of masculinity that is more open, more inclusive, and is also not afraid to be emotional and not afraid to be vulnerable, not afraid to be empathetic, or even things like being intuitive, things that we've often associated in our culture with the feminine. We can bring that forward because it's human. It's more human than any gender-related stuff that we assign to people. It's a human trait. So being masculine in this day and age and being sensitive too, for many of us has been a challenge, but I think as this is emerging, this is going to be something that where we can lead a way that will, I think, make life better for all men, whether they're sensitive or not.
So, who is the audience that we're looking at? And to me, that's the person who's listening at 2 a.m., who has spent their whole life hearing what's wrong with you because of the sensitivity. The seeker, the hungry, the restless, the one who's always felt that there has to be a deeper meaning than what they've experienced or been shown. And I feel that Still Waters is home for you. We put out an episode every other Wednesday currently. That may change going forward, but every Wednesday you can expect a new episode, a new guest. We're considering doing a live stream in the near future. And so we would like to hear who you would want to hear from on the podcast. We'd like to hear your story of how you came to your sensitivity. In fact, Bill, that you have a couple books that you've written about the sensitive journey that you were on. Would you like to speak a little bit about how you came to this realization?
Yeah, it was, I think like many highly sensitive men, I knew that I was something different about me. Of course, I got labeled as being too sensitive more often than not. And for me, sensitivity was kind of a negative word because it butted up against what I was taught of what masculinity was, what being a man was. So after a long career in the corporate world, I retired and I started to think about this. Now, I had read Dr. Aaron's book, and it made sense to me. It registered, checked all the boxes, but I had a really hard time accepting it. It took me almost 10 years to just get to that point. So I started writing a blog articles about this, and I wrote articles about questions I had, just like you have. Not just your normal, what is sensitivity, but what ifs, and how does this fit in, and that kind of thing. Questions that weren't really being asked and probably may never get to a study at some point in the future. And after 10 years of writing, or actually 5 years of writing those kind of things, I started to write these two books based on the articles that I had written, Confessions of a Sensitive Man and On Being a Sensitive Man. And it was my way of expressing my journey. It was an experiential book about my life growing up in the South as a sensitive boy and then a sensitive young man, and also my journey as a parent and now a grandparent and how that expressed in my life and in my work and in my relationship. So if you're looking for a book, it's about experiences and not necessarily a psychology book about the attributes and the ins and outs of being a highly sensitive person, these might be helpful. They might be a good starting point for you to start doing your own research in terms of how you're coping with dealing with the fact that you're sensitive and learning to accept and embrace it.
That's very well spoken. Thank you. For those of you who maybe are coming here for the first time and just hearing this, have never met Bill or I before, we highly recommend that if you're thinking that you might be sensitive and aren't sure, that you reach out and get Dr. Elaine Aron's book, The Highly Sensitive Person. Aron is spelled Aron, and it's Dr. Elaine Aron, and it's The Highly Sensitive Person. You can get it anywhere books are sold. It's kind of the resource that set this entire sensitive conversation into motion. And it's evolved tremendously since 1997, which is when the book was published. And we are taking that foundation and we're expanding on it because as the sensitive community evolves, we want to be able to make sure that we're accessible to anybody who has questions, who wants to tell their story, whatever it might be. And you can do that. We'll have Bill's website for the highly sensitive man in the description, and we'll have a way to contact us through email or some other method that you can utilize if you need to reach out. If you have questions, you want to talk to a human instead of read a book, that's fine too. We're not therapists. We do have therapists on the show that talk at length about the sensitivity, the masculinity, the creativity. It's something that is definitely beneficial if you have any inkling that you might be highly sensitive. And we encourage you. There's a lot of family out there, and
It's a big tribe too, right?
big tribe. Yes. So Bill's group meets every month, and then the podcast comes out every other Wednesday. So there's some great resources. You can find others online. And we encourage highly sensitive men to get into therapy. It's something that many men shy away from. Just like the label of sensitivity, it's always been portrayed as a weakness. You're in therapy, you must be ill. No, sometimes you go to therapy to just get your ducks in a row or get your head on straight or find out more about yourself. I've been in therapy for 54 years and it's been voluntary. Early on, it was for specific reasons. Now it's because therapy is really helping me answer the bigger questions that I have. It's also helping me create more meaning in my life and finding more fulfillment. So there's just so many avenues that we can cover, and we hope that Still Waters is part of that. Anything you'd like to add, Bill?
I just encourage everyone to tune in as the episodes drop, as Marcus said, every other Wednesday. Be interactive. Let us know you're out there. Like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. We are on any place you probably will find podcasts, so you find us everywhere out there. And we also have a YouTube channel as well, where you can see the video portion of this. And again, this is an opportunity for us to work together, not just us up here bringing guests and asking questions, but also the opportunities for you guys to get involved. And I wish you would. I think the minute you start educating yourself about the trait, the much easier it is to embrace it and thrive in it. That's what we want. We want highly empowered, highly sensitive men.
Yeah, we go.
The best way to do that is to educate yourself. And I hope that this podcast proves to be a resource for you going forward. So
Absolutely.
thanks a lot. And I appreciate you listening to Marcus and I do this introduction for you, but hopefully you'll enjoy the episodes as well.
And as we say at Still Waters, run deeper. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again soon.